You know, in a world where emotional reactivity feels like it's just the norm, David J. Lieberman's book, Never Get Angry Again, comes along with this really refreshing and super practical invitation.
And that invitation is to understand anger not as this thing we have to crush and suppress, but as a signal, something we can actually decode. See, this book isn't just about managing anger. It's about completely transforming the way we see ourselves, other people, and all those situations that trigger us. It's basically a guide to getting back our inner peace by getting in tune with our higher self.
So this brings us to a whole new way of looking at anger. Lieberman kicks things off by just dismantling this huge myth that anger is caused by things happening outside of us. He argues that no, that's not it. Anger actually pops up when our sense of control is threatened.
Think about it. Whether it's a rude colleague, a crazy traffic jam, or just a dismissive comment, what's the thing that really gets under our skin? It's that feeling of powerlessness. And the book invites us to reclaim that power, not by trying to dominate other people, but by mastering our own inner world. Honestly, this shift in perspective is so liberating. It means that our peace isn't riding on how other people behave. It's completely dependent on our ability to respond from a place of clarity and self-respect. We stop being these victims of circumstances, and instead, we become the caretakers of our own emotional landscape. Now, this whole concept builds on three internal forces that are always shaping how we respond to things: the soul, the ego, and the body.
First up, you've got the soul. This is the part of us that's always searching for truth and what's morally right.
Then, there's the ego. This is the force that just craves validation and wants to be in control. Now, these forces are in a constant tug-of-war, and our emotional state really just depends on which one is in the driver's seat. When the ego takes over, that's when we become reactive, defensive, and, easily offended.
And finally, there's the body, which is all about comfort and ease. When the body is leading the charge, we're just looking for short-term gratification and trying to avoid any kind of discomfort. But when we start acting from the soul, when we choose what's right over what feels easy or what looks impressive, that's how we build real self-esteem and find that inner peace.
This whole triad, soul, ego, body, it really echoes ancient wisdom from all over. The soul is our conscience, the ego is this illusion that we're all separate, and the body is the vessel for our experiences. Where Lieberman really shines is in his ability to translate these huge, timeless ideas into practical, everyday language we can all use.
Okay, so a theme that comes up again and again in the book is that low self-esteem is basically fuel for anger. It makes sense, right? When we don't feel good about ourselves, we're way more likely to take offense, to need approval from others, or just lash out. Lieberman's whole point is that true self-esteem comes from doing what is right, not just what feels good or looks good. And this shift from making ego-driven choices to soul-driven ones is what builds up our emotional resilience.
And on that note, Lieberman draws this incredibly powerful line between arrogance and genuine self-worth. He says arrogance is always rooted in insecurity, in that constant need to prove yourself. True self-esteem, though, it's quiet, it's grounded, it's pretty much unshakable. When we truly respect ourselves, we don't need other people to validate us, and because of that, we're way less likely to get triggered.
This brings us to the massive role that perspective plays. Lieberman uses this fantastic metaphor. A little kid who loses a toy might feel like their entire world is ending, but an adult, they see the bigger picture. In the same way, when we can zoom out and get some perspective on our own situations, our triggers start to lose their power. Things like time, reflection, and just a commitment to seeing the truth help us get past that immediate sting of an insult or an inconvenience.
He really emphasizes that anger just thrives when we have a narrow point of view. When we're laser-focused on our own pain or our own frustration, we completely lose sight of the bigger context. But the moment we expand our awareness, maybe consider the other person's perspective, or our own long-term goals, or just how temporary this moment is, we get our balance back.
Now, this next one is one of the most profound insights in the entire book, the link between unresolved shame and anger. So many of us carry around these wounds from childhood, experiences of conditional love, rejection, or constant criticism, and those wounds shape how we see things today. So when someone ignores us or criticizes us or even just disagrees with us, it can trigger this really deep sense of shame or feeling unworthy. In that context, anger just becomes a defense mechanism.
A huge central theme in this book is that anger often comes from this illusion that we're in control. We don't get angry just because something bad happened, we get angry because we weren't in control of what happened. And that insight is both really humbling and incredibly empowering. It reminds us that control is often just an illusion, and that true peace doesn't come from controlling the world around us, but from mastering our response to it.
So this brings us to the really actionable stuff. Lieberman doesn't just leave us with a bunch of theory. He gives us actual practical tools we can use for finding calm every single day.
He suggests things like identifying the real source of our anger and practicing detachment from those stories our ego loves to tell us. He also says we need to choose responsibility instead of blame. He encourages us to reframe situations with compassion and curiosity, to build our self-esteem to consistent, value-driven choices, and even to use mental rehearsal to get ready for situations we know are going to be emotionally charged. The key here is that these tools aren't about suppressing emotion, they're about creating a little bit of space between the stimulus and our response.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, Never Get Angry Again is so much more than a guide to emotional control. It's really a call to inner alignment. Lieberman reminds us that peace isn't something we find by changing other people, but by changing how we relate to ourselves. When we act from the soul, with integrity, with humility, and with perspective, anger just loses its grip, and calm becomes our natural state.
Honestly, this book is like a mirror, a map, and a mentor all rolled into one. It invites us to look within, to question all our assumptions, and to choose a higher path. And not just for our own well-being, but for the sake of our relationships, our communities, and our world. And that's a pretty powerful thought to leave you with.